The biggest mistake that I think people make with endurance racing is the same mistake that I made a decade ago. Was a marathon was the pinnacle of running at the time, and I only gave myself 5 months to get ready for it. And I coach full time now with athletes, and one of the biggest things I try to get people to do is back down off the inspiration and let's build a foundation. Because having a giant goal is phenomenal, and you should. But as long as the time frame associated with it has the proper balance. Because when I did the first world record, had I had the idea to do 50 consecutive, it still would have been a great goal, but not in that year. I had to go through the process and take my knocks and learn and evolve and grow to get to that point where I could even, toe the line for 50.
How much of the learning and growing was your body growing and getting stronger and more capable, and how much was knowing how to deal with what you were going to go through mentally?
Yeah, both play a very pivotal role, because the amount of volume that I was doing, it's the smaller stabilizers, ligaments, tendons that don't develop as fast as muscles do. And that's why a lot of people get hurt, because they go too quick with the development of these things, and their muscles will always grow faster than the smaller stabilizers things, and people aren't paying attention to those details. And they just get so excited with the enormity of the journey that they're not paying attention to those small things. And if you overlook those, you're going to get injured and you're going to be sidelined. Mental's obviously huge, and that is the sword that you have to continually sharpen. So again, the goal would have been great in 2010. I wasn't nearly mentally tough enough. I had to go through that process to where I could wake up and do it. It's like a muscle. It's like a cardiovascular system. It's something that you can develop, but it takes time. Confidence builds confidence, and success builds success. And having not taken the right steps, I would have ultimately failed come time for the 50.
Now, you've talked about the development of the alter ego, the Iron Cowboy.
Yeah.
And man, at first it came to me as like a passing reference, and then the more I researched it, the more I got into it. I'm utterly fascinated. Get us inside that. Like, what does that look like? Is it flipping a switch? What are the traits that the ego has?
Yeah, so initially the Iron Cowboy literally was, I wore a cowboy hat during the marathon or run portion of my races so my kids could see me coming, right? And then the beard evolved. And if you take a real close look at my logo, it's the beard and the cowboy hat.
Okay.
Right? And then if you turn it sideways, it's IC for Iron Cowboy.
Nice.
And so a lot of thought went into it. But day 30, we'll fast forward all the way to day 30 of the 50, when massive struggle, massively trying to figure things out, incredible amounts of trauma. Day 30, I'm in Connecticut, and I'm 80 miles into the bike ride, and I literally pull off to the side of the road, I chuck my bike, and I curl into a ball and I start crying. And I had to start focusing on all the reasons and whys I was out there. And by themselves, one reason was not enough for me to get back on my bike and do 20 more Ironmans. But as I started going through the list of everything that I was doing and why I was doing it, it's interesting because I would gather them all together, and I'd focus on this big ball, and I would bring it in close to me. And as soon as I focused on that, I started to experience a rebirth, because now I was focusing on the very, very next moment that I had control over, and everything that I was trying to accomplish and why I was there. And I call this process, now looking back on it, both a rebirth and putting on my uniform, which was the alter ego. And my uniform was those yellow sunglasses you've seen me wear in some of my pictures. And when I put those glasses on, that's when the Iron Cowboy comes out. And that dude is a bad, bad man. And there's nothing that's gonna get in his way. And I do a lot of speaking from stage now, and I want to encourage people to find whatever their uniform is, find whatever their alter ego is. Because when you discover that and how to flip that switch, that's when nothing gets in your way, and that's where you shift your focus and you realize what your purpose is. And I knew If I had the courage to get back on my bike and finish that day and then do the 20 more, my life would be different.
That you're thinking that while you're there on the ground.
And this whole process was about 8 minutes. The whole thing from complete meltdown to breaking all of the purposes and whys down to the realization, the rebirth, and getting back on and going. And it can happen that quick. We're moments away every day from a decision that's going to completely change our life. Every single moment of every single day has a massive impact on where you ultimately end up. And so that was a huge turning point, but it was all the decisions before and after that led to that moment. If the journey you're on is big enough, and it's going to have enough impact and change your life and other people's lives, one reason's not going to be big enough. And you need to put a lot of thought and a lot of preparation and a lot of meditation into all of the reasons why. Because at some point in time, you're going to need to gather all those little bad boys up and intently focus on it to have enough courage to get back up and do 20 more Ironmans after everything that we went through.